On today's action-packed episode, we'll tell you who we think are going to be some of the best fantasy players in the AL East for the upcoming 2023 fantasy baseball season. Let's lock on in.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball Podcast, your number one source for daily fantasy baseball knowledge. Thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino, here with my co-host, as always, Matthew Ane.
Yo.
You can find us on all social media platforms and podcasting apps. Just search for Locked On Fantasy Baseball, and we'll be there. Please like, subscribe, and comment, especially on YouTube. We love talking fantasy baseball with you. On today's episode, we're talking about the AL East and our favorite team, the New York Yankees. We're going to let you guys know who the best fantasy baseball players are going to be for this year in this division. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel is the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more and visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. So, as I already said, guys, this is the AL East. We got to start with Matt and I's team, the New York Yankees. But my brother, Matt, who are we talking about first today?
Well, we can't just bury the lead here. We're going to talk about the new home run record setting for the New York Yankees, and that's Mr. Aaron Judge. This guy you don't have to say much about him other than he just had an absolute ridiculous season last year. He could be the number one outfielder again this year. He was last year, and right now he's being drafted as the first outfielder off the board and the second overall pick, which is kind of crazy for me. I don't know if I'd be the one that drafted him first overall just because of the fact that, he's not one of those like prototypical five-tool contributors, even though he did have 16 bags last year, stolen bases to be more specific. With me, it's just not the prototypical first couple picks kind of guy for me, but he will match. So let me read you off what he did last year. He had 570 at-bats, 133 runs, 131 ribbies, 62 home runs, and he batted .311, which is just absolutely monstrous. You couldn't extra anything else from this guy. To be honest, he was the number one player last year, and I don't foresee him doing 62 ever again, but in his history, he has gotten where he's had in the 50s home runs. He's done it twice now. And I don't see where there's a possibility where he couldn't do it again. So, for that matter, I think he's going to be great. But, that's just about it for me.
Yeah, brother, I think you covered, one of my favorite players, Aaron Judge, about as good as you could. What else is there to say about him except I have him as my number one overall player and my number one overall outfielder. I think you take Judge with confidence this year. You expect a lot of bombs, RBIs, ribbies. He'll chip in some steals, have a good batting average. If you got a top three pick, you're very lucky to get Aaron Judge again this year. But moving on, let's move to, the Yankees ace, and he's got a little competition now with some, better pitchers there. But Mr. Gerrit Cole still, last year he did have a little bit of a down year. I'll read you off his stats. As a 31-year-old, Gerrit Cole had 13 wins, 8 losses, a 3.50 ERA. He started 33 games. He pitched 200 innings. He had 257 strikeouts. And he had a 101 whip. Still very, very good numbers for Gerrit Cole, but, he did give up a lot more home runs last year than normal. I believe he led the American League with giving up 33 home runs. Here's my thing. I think Gerrit Cole definitely has potential to be better this year. In the ERA department, you can't ask for more than 200 innings, 257 Ks, and the 101 whip. But the thing is, the ERA can go back down because they used a little bit more of a bouncy ball. If you guys, pay attention to MLB, when Aaron Judge was going for the home run record, they were using a ball that went a little bit further, had a little bit more, pop in it. And they wanted to get Judge to that 62. So, that means Gerrit Cole had to pitch with that ball. And, he probably gave up a few more home runs than he would have using that ball. Now, I have Gerrit Cole ranked as my number 6 starting pitcher. So, I think you could you could gain a little bit there. He's actually coming off the board as number 3 starting pitcher. I lied to you. That's Fantasy Pros ADP. They take into account Fantrax, RT Sports, and Matt, what was the other one again? Oh Lord,
NFBC.
I forgot. Yeah, and NFBC. So they take all 3 of those and they combine them and they give you the average. So number 3 starting pitcher, 16 overall for Gerrit Cole. Don't know if I take him that high, but I definitely see room for improvement for Gerrit Cole for this year.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much you can say about the guy. He's going to be a stud. So, draft him nice. I don't know about 3. I have him at 4. There's 3 other guys I draft ahead of him. But let's move on here. I want to talk about a pitcher too, and that's Mr. Nasty Nestor Cortes.
Oh, Lord, love him.
Yeah, and I love the nickname too because he is so nasty. And you know what? Mr. Mustache over here just had a great season. It's funny enough, where his ADP is versus where I'm going to be drafting him is just going to be outrageous because I just need him in every league. Right now, his ADP is number 33 as a starting pitcher and 103 overall, which I just feel is blasphemy in my opinion, because personally, I think he's going to be absolutely ridiculous and kind of repeat what he did last year. I have him as my number 19th starting pitcher. So, I'm a little bullish on him, but I mean, shoot, what the kid did last year is definitely repeatable outside of the ERA. I think that'll be a little bit more inflated, but still, I think he's going to get a little bit more innings this year. So with that being said, let me read off what he did last year. So in 100, they don't give me that on here, do they?
You want game started, Matt? I got 28 starts last year.
In 28 starts, I like innings pitched. So 158 innings pitched. He had a 2.44 ERA, 163 strikeouts, and a 0.922 WHIP. Now, that's just absolutely incredible. The WHIP might come up just a tad, and so will the ERA, like I said. But I think if he gets more innings in there, hits that 170, 180 mark, and I mean, God, if they would just let him hit 200, which is a possibility, I think that, we're going to see a lot higher K rate, and I think that he's just going to be absolutely unstoppable, and he can be a top 15 pitcher this year. I don't have him drafted at the ceiling. I have him drafted right in between the ceiling and where he's going. So, I think it's a fair spot to grab him. Plus, I'm also not saying go ahead and jump and grab him where I'm saying to grab him, but at 103 overall, I'm okay with drafting him at 94th, 90th. And I think that's a fair place to scoop him. It'll be your pitcher 3/4, and I don't think you'll be all upset. I think you'll be giving me a clap and a nice little thank you at the end of the season.
Yeah, man. I'm actually in sync with you on this one. I have Nestor ranked as my 19th starting pitcher as well. It might be a New York thing, but guys, if you listen to the podcast at all last year when we were still doing our own thing before we were locked on, we praised Nasty Nestor at the beginning of the season last year. We told you to pick him up in every league he was available, and if you did, it paid off for you. I know Matt read off last year, but I actually want to read off his last 2 years with the Yankees. 14 wins for Nasty Nestor, 7 losses, 42 starts, but 50 games overall, 2.61 ERA, 251 innings, 266 strikeouts, and a 0.97 WHIP. And the reason that I wanted to read you off the last 2 years is so he's not a one-year wonder. He's done this now for 2 years in a row. He's going to be 28 years old this year. He's still pretty young. And he also upped the velocity on his fastball last year specifically. When he first got started, he was sitting around 89, 90 when he first got started in his career. Now he's up to 92 last year. He's been working on the mechanics. He's got a very tricky, release to time. And I think Nasty Nestor is just like Matt said, like I said, just going to be a very, very valuable starting pitcher this year in fantasy baseball. But moving on, let's hit our last New York Yankee, and that's Giancarlo Stanton. He's somebody that's a little bit tricky. He's getting a little bit older. It seems like the bat speed's getting a little bit slower. But when, Giancarlo hits the ball, he hits it very hard, he hits it very far. Last year, he did have a down year. He played 110 games. He only had 53 runs. He did have 31 bombs, 78 RBIs, and he had 211. Once again, I think it's due to mainly bat speed and stuff like that. The big batting average drop off from 2021 to 2022, which is, he went from a 273 batting average in 2021 to 211 last year for Stanton. And Stanton's coming off the board, as the number 31 outfielder, 130th overall pick. Outfields are pretty bad this year, so I'm actually comfortable taking him, there. I actually have Stanton as my number 20 outfielder. I'm looking over it. I could see it moving down. He's really just mainly going to be, there for the home runs, RBIs. He doesn't contribute in steals, runs, and batting average is a question mark. So I could see myself pushing him down a little bit lower, but with outfield being as bad as it is, it's going to be interesting. But I wouldn't be surprised if Stanton goes out there and he stays healthy and he hits 50 plus home runs. That's the risk you got to be willing to take when you take somebody like Stanton.
Yep, I think you got it covered there. But up next, we're going to talk about the Blue Jays and how good Bichette is for fantasy this year. And before that, we're going to have a great sponsor we have to talk about here. That's FanDuel. Here at Locked On, we're super excited about our new sports betting partner, FanDuel. Download FanDuel now so you can place your bets on Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Man, did those Eagles look great in that last game. I'm betting for them. So should you. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is the safe and super easy to use. Best of all, get paid instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. So we got Mr. Blue Jays over here, and we're going to talk about somebody that I think might as well not bury the lead here and talk about Mr. Bichette. Bo was somebody that was a fantasy darling going into last season. Everybody had him rated high. So did I. I really thought he was going to, continue what he was doing and building on that. But, it seems like he fell a little short, started off a little slow, and personally did end up with a decent season, but not that 30-30 like everybody thought he was going to do. Now let me read off what he did. So he had 652 at-bats. He had 91 runs, 93 ribbies, 13 stolen bases, and he batted .290. That isn't exactly what we thought and why we were drafting him. He's, first 5 picks of the draft last season. I was guilty of it in some of the leagues. And you know what? To be honest, 2021 was a little deceiving where he had 690 at-bats. He had, 121 runs, 102 ribbies. He had 29 home runs. And he had, 25 stolen bases and batted .298. That's a significant drop-off from last year. So, quite honestly, do I think that the ribbies and RBIs, the ribbies and runs can come up? Probably. The Blue Jays are a pretty fantastic team. But at the same time, it's just one of those things where I don't know if we're going to see him hit the 29, 30 home runs. And I don't know how often they're going to let him steal in this lineup. They got Dylan Varsho that's going to end up eating up some of those stolen bases, and they're probably going to mix and match because they love playing with that lefty-righty ordeal stuff. So that's what could hurt Bichette in that category. So let's see where that takes him next year. Right now, I have him as my number 6 overall shortstop. His ADP is number 3, which I find a little high. Like you're passing up on like Bobby Witt, Francisco Lindor, Marcus Semien. Those are guys I'd prefer to have over Bo. But other than that, you can't go wrong with drafting him at number 6, in my opinion.
Yeah, Matt. I agree with you on some things. Certain other things, I beg to differ a little bit. I'm in sync with ADP here. I have Bo as my 3rd shortstop. I think, he had a little bit of that slump last year, but the thing is that he showed that he can adjust. If the pitchers were pitching him differently, he bounced back in the second half last year. After the All-Star break last year, Bichette played 67 games. He had 42 runs, 10 bombs, 43 RBI, 6 steals, and he hit .337. So I think as a 25-year-old this year, Bo is going to, I think, find his, stride and prove why he's a fantasy darling. And I think you're going to see the power. I think you're going to see the 20-plus steals. If he went 30-30 this year, I wouldn't be shocked. But I would lean more towards, 25, 26 bombs, 20, 25 steals. So maybe more 20, 25 for Bo. And, the batting average is going to be there in a great lineup. But, let's move on to our next, studly Toronto Blue Jay. And that's Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I don't even think there's really too much to say about Vladdy. He's in that, first base tier with guys like Alonso, Goldschmidt, Freddie Freeman, and, them make up the top 4. And you could put them in any order, and I wouldn't argue with you. But for Vlad specifically, he's only going to be 24 this year. I still don't think we've seen his best season, even though he had 48 bombs and 311 in, 2021 as a 22-year-old. Last year, Vladdy was almost just as good. 90 runs, 32 bombs, 97 RBIs. He even chipped in 8 steals for you last year. And he hit .274 for Vladdy. I personally have him ranked as my number for first baseman. But once again, I really wouldn't argue with you if you took him a little higher. But let me just give you his ADP here real quick. He's coming off the board as, the number, I believe, number 4 first baseman and 13th overall. So you can't argue with that for Vladdy.
And Vladdy's going to be a stud. He's my number 2 this year. You can't say anything bad about the guy, honestly. Other than he doesn't really steal stolen bases. Doesn't really steal bases. He already stole stolen bases. But anyway, let's talk about our next guy here, and that's Mr. Alejandro Kirk. One of these guys that just kind of like came out of nowhere, but not really came out of nowhere. I think he's going to be an absolute stud at the catcher position. He's the number 5 catcher right now in ADP and number 103 overall pick. Personally, he is my number 2 overall catcher. I'm pretty bullish on him this year. Yeah, I really think he's going to have a fantastic season, especially on that Blue Jays team. Let's read off what he did last year in 470 at-bats. He had 59 runs, 63 ribbies, 14 home runs, and batted .285. Now, I mean, those numbers aren't too impressive, but personally, this is what I think is going to happen. He's going to get everyday playing time, whether that's, at first base, catcher, and I've heard a rumor where they might even bounce him out to the outfield. If that's the case, he's going to be playing every day, and that's going to be like a Salvatore Perez. And, we're going to get that power every day. If he gets 570 at-bats and be able to get in a rhythm, this kid's going to be outrageous, and he's going to be one of the top catchers and could be in a top 50 overall player standpoint for that point because, the sky's the limit. Kid's got power, speed, and on a great team.
Hey, wow, Matt, you're actually kind of bullish on Kirk. I'll tell you the same thing. I was bullish on him coming out of last season, but, as I got to do my deep dive, I actually moved him down. I did have him in my top 5 at catcher, but I've moved him down to actually 8th at catcher, and I'll tell you why I moved Kirk down. Kirk's second half was very, very disappointing after he started off like a house on fire. So in the second half, after the All-Star break, Kirk played 56 games. He only had 14 runs in 56 games, only 3 home runs, 26 RBIs is okay, and he hit .246. And that was after that monster's first half. It just makes me think maybe did the pitchers figure him out? He could have possibly tired down. It was his first, full go at it in the, big leagues. He jumped up, almost 300 at-bats there, and from 2021 to 2022 for Kirk. So I think I need to see him do it one more time before I'm out there ringing the bell from him. And plus, 14 bombs isn't really, isn't doing it for me, in a position where, a lot of catchers hit for a lot of power. And I think catcher is deeper this year than ever. So that's why I'm a little bit down on Kirk. But let's do one more Toronto Blue Jay before we move on here. And that is going to be Mr. Alek Manoah. I also love Alek Manoah's nickname, guys. If you don't know, he's also nicknamed the Mountain, which is one of the coolest nicknames in all of baseball, as far as I'm concerned. But Manoah, followed up that big rookie year with a pretty strong sophomore year as well. So Alek Manoah last year as a 24-year-old, 16 wins, 7 losses, a 2.24 ERA, 196 innings, 180 Ks, and a 0.99 WHIP. Now, I love Manoah, but I think the people love him a little bit more than I do. Alek Manoah is coming off the board, number 17 starting pitcher overall, 55th overall pick. I actually have him a little bit lower in my rankings. I have him at 20th. So I'm not too far off consensus, but he leaves a little room to be desired in the strikeout department. Maybe he could fix that, but I think he went more for the control this year. Alek Manoah wanted to lower that ERA, which also, he sacrificed him in the K's department, but I think Alek Manoah is still top 20 pitcher, hands down. You can take him with confidence as your number 2.
Yeah, buddy. I think that's great. And from there, I think we have somebody special, somebody special to talk about here.
Yes, sir, Matt. We certainly do. And, before we move on here to our next team, and let me give you a little tease. Guys, what do you do with Adley Rutschman and the Baltimore Orioles, rising star team? But once again, before we head into that, we have to talk about our buddy, Lindsay, who hosts Locked On MLB Prospects. A guy, he has all of the knowledge in the world. People like to call him an encyclopedia of knowledge with the prospects. And guys, once again, if you didn't hear it on the last episode, we're gonna have him on. We're gonna have him on sometime next week when we talk prospects. So please be on the lookout for that episode. But also, if you're like me and you got a full-time job, you like to hit the gym sometimes, you're trying to get a quick snack that isn't high on calories but tastes absolutely delicious, you have to try Built Bar. Not sure how Built Bar does it, but these bars taste delicious while maintaining amazing macros. What's even better is that Built Bars are super healthy for you. Built Bars only have 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. They also come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. Once again, guys, I got to try that churro one at some point. It sounds absolutely delicious. But also, we've been talking, about getting your Built Bars at Built.com for years. But now, guess what? You guys can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. So, guys, you got to try Built Bar. But let's head into that, next team like we were talking about, that Baltimore Orioles team. They got a lot of young studs. They also have a lot of great prospects coming up. So I think they have a chance to, be very, very surprisingly good team next year. But you can't bury the lead with their, arguably number one, prospect coming up last year, and that's Adley Rutschman. I think the kid is going to be absolutely dynamite this year. He's coming off the board as the number 3 overall catcher right now and number 64 overall. I actually have him as my 3rd catcher as well. And I think there's so much potential with the kid. Last year, Adley played 113 games. He had 70 runs. He hit 13 home runs. He had 35 doubles. Just in case you didn't hear me correct, 113 games, 35 doubles for Adley, 42 RBIs, chipped in 4 steals, and he hit 254. That batting average is going to shoot up. Adley always hit for average in the minors. Last year in the minors, he hit 304. The year before that, he hit 285. And, as a 21-year-old, he did only a 254, but I see so much room for improvement for Adley. Once again, I'm taking him as my number 3 overall catcher, and I don't think you can go wrong. I know it's a steep price, but I love Adley Rutschman coming into this year.
Now, Aldi should be a stud. Honestly, I'm right there with you on par. He is my number 6 catcher. But it's a toss-up between everybody else. I just go with who's done in the past at that point versus taking the risk on Aldi. But let's move on here to Mr. Cedric Mullins. Cedric just loves to steal everything under the sun, including your mom. But he's just not as bad as the guy from the Jets. So
oh Lord,
yeah. But Cedric Mullins has been great over the last couple of years, and last year was no different. With 608 at bats, 89 runs, 16 home runs, 64 ribbies, 34 stolen bases, and batting at 258. Can't really ask much more from him. He's number 12 overall outfielder in ADP and 49th pick overall. That's pretty good. Let's see how on par I am with him. I have him. How bad do I have him buried?
Oh Lord.
No, I'm kidding. I got him at 16, so I'm only about 4 off. You know what? It's just, it is when I'm drafting higher in these drafts, I prioritize, big numbers like home runs and stuff. And the only time I would grab him at where his ADP is if I grab somebody with like a lot of, like, if I grabbed, for instance, Aaron Judge, who's going to hit me a million home runs, then I'll grab Cedric to get me the stolen bases that I'm missing with Judge, for instance. And that's how you make up with it. You play a game. Because, with 16 home runs and, very little ribbies, that's where you got to kind of make up with it. And it's just a matter of how you construct your team at that point. But Cedric is a great player.
Yeah, man, I can't add too much to your analysis because that was literally perfect. Yeah, he's exactly somebody you want to pair with, like an Aaron Judge for those steals. One thing that I will say, I think Cedric Mullins can improve that batting average from 258. I think he can get up over 260, 265, maybe even 270 because in 2020 he had 271 and 2021 Cedric Mullins hit 291. He's not going to get you back to that 30 bomb, so don't expect that. That ball was a little bit bouncy in 2021. But, Cedric Mullins, I got him at number 15 overall outfielder. I think he's a very high-end 2 number outfielder. I necessarily wouldn't want him as my number 1, but, sometimes you got to take what you can get. So let's move on to another team in the, that tough AL East division. And this guy is actually, very, very interesting. It's Wander Franco, a former number 1 overall prospect. And he's just been so tough to to have on your teams and to deal with the lack of production. It's been very tough with Wander Franco. Last year, I will say, if you once again, if you guys paid attention to our podcast, I told you not to really be too bullish on him when everybody was drafting Wander Franco really high. I said, hold out for, some other guys that are going under him and it will pay off. I know I talked about Dansby Swanson a lot last year and, kind of just worked out if you listened in that sense. But last year, Wander Franco, as a 21-year-old, played 83 games, 46 runs. He did have 20 doubles, 6 bombs, 33 RBIs, 8 steals, and he had 277. I think Wander Franco, as he grows into his man body and, starts to figure things out a little bit, you're going to see a little bit more pop. You're going to see a little bit more speed. But Wander still reminds me of a 2020 guy, tops. Maybe as he gets to 23, 24, 25, we might see more improvement than that. But I wouldn't expect any more than a 2020 season, 90 runs maybe. Maybe 75 RBIs, but he could hit 300. See, that's the thing. So, I think this is the year where, Wander Franco is coming off the board as a 13 shortstop, 88 overall. I'm definitely willing to pay that price. I currently have Wander as my number 12 shortstop, but I can see maybe reaching a little bit higher to get him. If you take him as number 10 shortstop, there's still room for him to pay off if he does have that big breakout season that we all been waiting for as a 22-year-old. So I think there's room to profit on taking Wander Franco this year.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, I have it as my number 9. I'm a little bit more bullish on him.
Oh, there you go. Good. Yeah.
But, I mean, it's the only reason is because the guys behind him, like Xander Bogaerts, Pena, and Carlos Correa, right? Those are the 3 guys directly behind him. The only guy that would probably sneak up ahead of him is Pena. And it's because Pena has the upside to have all those higher counting stats and be that better pick. But other than that, like Wander Franco is going to be better in terms of all the counting stats across the board, except for maybe runs. And they're all kind of the same player at that point, unless Franco just starts saying, hey, I'm going to start hitting home runs and I'm going to start doing everything else. I kind of group them all together. Let me move on here. Let's talk about somebody I truly love, and that's Mr. Tyler Glasnow. Okay. I've loved him since the moment this kid got called up. Dom turned me on to him back in the day when he was on the Pirates. I make the joke every time when, can the Pirates just trade him? And they did, and now he's incredible. And, let me read you off what he did in 2021 before he just, his elbow decided to rip in half, right? So he had 88 innings pitched. He had a 2.66 ERA. He had 123 strikeouts earlier at that point with 88 innings in. And his whip was phenomenal, too, a 0.932. Now, I think he's going to do that again. I think that he's just been this injury bug, almost a flangey guy kind of type thing. But one thing I could say is his elbow should be healthy for the next 2 years at least. That's what Tommy Johns does. It buys you a minimum of 2 years before, you may hurt yourself again in that aspect. On top of that, too, he got a little time right before the season ended where he could show his stuff, and he did a Verlander where, hey, he looks good. It looks like his stuff's there. The velo is there. And the only thing that may be off because he is a TJ guy is the control. So that whip may climb for a bit and then balance out by the end of the season. Glassy is a great pitcher and a great talent. And the kid is actually he's only 29 years old. So he still has some time in prime. Pitchers are more like chess players. And as they get older, they get better and more wiser. So I think that personally, Tyler Glasnow is about to step into his prime years. And I think that, he could bounce back. And it's not like you're paying a high price for him. He's the 28th pitcher off the board, 87th overall. And for me, I have him 25, so I'm almost in par with that. I'm taking him a smidge bit early because I have a lot of confidence in the kid this year.
Matt, you're killing it tonight with your analysis. You've just been on point and everything, and I think this might be our most in sync episode, brother. I also have him as my number 25 starting pitcher. And I feel like if he comes out in spring training and he's vibing off of what he did last year, I can move him up even higher. I think he could wind up being, a top 10 starting pitcher if everything goes right for Glasnow. I'm going to throw it out to guys a little bit here. He throws 98 miles an hour. His breaking stuff is great. He has a great slider. He has a great curveball. It's just that the stuff is elite with this kid. He knows how to place those pitches. Matt, I can't add anything else. The kid's just absolutely phenomenal. But let's move to another starting pitcher here with the Rays that I absolutely love, and that's Jeffrey Springs. he is somebody that I picked up in every single league I was in last year, helped me win a few of them, and the kid just kind of broke out as a starting pitcher last year. So Jeffrey Springs last year as a 29-year-old had 9 wins, 5 losses, 25 starts, 33 games overall. He did come out of the pen for a few games at the beginning of the year. 2.46 ERA, 135 innings, 144 Ks, and a 107 WHIP. Right now, you can get Jeffrey Springs out of steal, guys. You can get him as your number. He's coming off the board as number 52 starting pitcher so far. ADP, 175th overall. Now, guys, that's an absolute steal. I do have him ranked. Hold on, let me. I got him ranked at 43, so I'm about 10 spots over, consensus right now. I think if you get him as your number 5 starting pitcher, you can be absolutely thrilled. And I think he just takes another step forward as a starting pitcher this year. And once again, guys, that's Jeffrey Springs.
Yeah, Springs is phenomenal. I got him my 46, so I'm not too far off from there. But I think he's such a value at that point that you got to take him, especially in those deep leagues like those 12-man, 14-man league, 15-man leagues. Man, you're going to be grateful you caught him at the 170th overall pick. Let's move on to the Boston Red Sox, the worst team in the division. Sorry, Boston fans. I got to throw that extra dap in there because I'm a Yankee fan. And you guys have just teed it off because you have terrible management. And we're going to talk about your best player, though, and he's absolutely incredible, and that's Mr. Rafael Devers. Devers is just one of those guys that was a top-end prospect coming up when it was his time, and he's just been stellar ever since. Last year, he had 555 at-bats. He had 84 runs, 27 bombs, 88 ribs, 3 stolen bases, but he's not really known to steal those bases, and a 2.95 batting average. Can't ask more for the kid. If guys can get on base, if they start calling up some guys and start really making some plays here, maybe his counting stats go up, but I pretty much am going to see the same exact stat line for next year. It's just not a great team overall, but he's going to force himself to get them to at least a couple more points and get himself some more home runs and ribbies. That's the only thing I could see kind of going up. Because you know what? Personally, I think he's due for a better season in the home run category. He's had, 2021, he had 38 home runs. 2019, he had 32. So, I think he's definitely going to creep back up into the 30s and mid-30s is where I really see him. And just so everybody knows, I have him as my 6th third baseman as well. So, I think it's a steal right there. And there you go.
Yeah, man, we're 2 in sync tonight. I got him at 6 in my third base rankings as well, and I'm just really not touching him in most fantasy leagues this year. I'd rather either get an elite third baseman or wait on it because I think, as Matt mentioned, the counting stats aren't really going to be there for him this year. I don't think anyway. That Boston team, that's very unexciting. But let's move on to our last player of the night. And, man, I find it so hard to know what to do with this guy. That's Chris Sale. Chris Sale can come out and he could be an absolute elite starting pitcher and he could be a top 20 starting pitcher, or he can do absolutely nothing and get hurt again. And I just don't like the attitude on him. When he was in the minors last year, he broke a TV. I think he had like a motorcycle accident too. It's just like, dude, you're 34 years old, Chris Sale. Come on. What are you doing here? He only pitched 42 innings in 2021, 5 last year, 147 in 2019. So the track record is that he's starting to fall off. And, when he pitched 147 innings in 2019, it was a 4.40 ERA, 147 innings. He got you the 218 strikeouts. And a 108 whip, but it's not the starting pitcher we're used to. I have him as my 48th starting pitcher. I'm kind of right there with ADP right now. So far in ADP, Chris Sale is 50th starting pitcher, 170 overall. You could throw the dart down there, but starting pitching is super deep this year. I still don't know exactly what I'm doing with him. Might wait till spring training comes around to make my full decision, but I think if I'm drafting like tomorrow, I'm kind of staying away from Chris Sale.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that's like I stay away from kind of guy. As much as I like him, it's not worth it. You're drafting him at 50 is ADP right now. At 50 starting pitcher, 170th overall in a 12-man, 15-man league. That's your pitcher, 5, 6? The guys going around him at that point are a little bit more safer at that point because depending on how your draft went to is depending on whether I pick him or not. So, if I need the upside and I didn't get a lot of studs in the beginning, then I maybe take that shot. But at the same time, if I have a decent pitching or I need a little bit more stability towards the end, I'm definitely moving on to somebody else because there is, like Dom said, a lot of talent steeped this year. So that's why I'd probably leave Chris Sale off my team in most scenarios.
Yeah. Think you're spot on there with your analysis, brother. But guys, that's all for us today. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, review, and also make sure you check out our website. There's a lot of great stuff on there. We have our rankings. You can find some about us information. Matt and I, hope to be starting writing some blog posts on there sooner than later. So please be sure to check that out. All of that you can find in our link tree, which is on any social media platform where you find us. Also, guys, just wanted to let you know, tune in on Wednesday. We're going to be breaking down the AL Central and all those teams as we, get to the end here of our division previews. But lastly, before you leave, guys, if you enjoy this podcast, once again, you need to check out our colleague Lindsay's podcast that is Locked On MLB Prospects. He is an absolute mastermind with the prospects. He will definitely help you with your fantasy leagues this year. But guys, until next time, see you.
Peace.